Record is on.
Big Billy Goat Gruff.
All right. Good evening from Nairobi. Good morning in the US and other places that you may be joining us. This roundtable discussion is, of course, maybe we could mute if you're not speaking so that we're not hearing other conversations that may be in the background where you are.
All right.
This is, of course, in connection with the African Studies meeting. So Agenda 2063 in the age of the fourth industrial revolution. We have a number of speakers. We're going to go through the areas in which they'll be making a presentation. Everybody will have about 5 minutes, and then we'll have an opportunity for Q&A. We'll introduce each of the speakers as we start as they begin to speak. Let me introduce myself. I'm Paul Tiambe-Zeleza. I've been involved in this program from the very beginning. I was commissioned by the Carnegie Corporation of New York in 2011, African-born academics who happen to be in the United States and Canada engage with African higher education institutions. And as all of you know, in 2013, we set up this program. So we are now in our 7th year. We have sponsored more than 400 fellows, and I think it has exceeded all our expectations in terms of the impact, certainly on the institutions to which the fellows have gone, but also the impact on the fellows themselves in building a community of scholars that, of course, in their individual work and collectively committed to transformation on the continent and making a contribution to institutions on the continent, to colleagues, to programs, and of course to students in terms of graduate students. And in some cases, many of you have been teaching in undergraduates as well. And of course, the impact on research has been quite significant. So the roundtable is, we want to discuss how can African studies facilitate the engagement of Africans in the diaspora and on the continent in a shared vision to achieve key transformational outcomes of Agenda 2063 of the African Union in the age of the fourth industrial. Because still with the pandemic, but like any crisis, it will eventually come to an end. But the world would have been quite transformed in quite significant ways. So let me begin by, asking, the people who are going to speak to address the topics that they, been assigned to. The first person is my old friend, Professor Okome, who is in African and Women's Studies, and is the Leonard and Claire Tao Professor at Brooklyn College, City University of New York. It's truly a pleasure to in the African Union, I think African Development Bank, and Professor Okome is going to talk to us briefly about youth unemployment and sustainable development in North Africa, Egypt, Mauritania, and Sudan. Professor Okome, I'll give you 5 minutes because this is, of course, just a teaser. Professor Okome, please.
Okay, thank you very much, my brother. I will talk about youth unemployment and sustainable development, not just in North Africa, but in the entire continent. As we know, our continent is very young. And let me just preface this by giving you my idea in terms of what we need to do. What we need to do is what we're already doing, but we need to do it in a more organized way. That's to create epistemic communities of Africans that is made up of scholars and development experts, who are practitioners, students, ordinary people who are interested in given issue areas. One of the issue areas, I'm interested in everything. And right now it's the Nigerian protests that's uppermost in my mind. And what I'm doing with the Nigeria protests is indicative of what I've done all my life. Now, we have the particular advantage of being able to access these cutting edge communication tools that we get in the social media, these kinds of gatherings that we can do virtually. And I have a paper that I wrote about that, how we can build community using these technological tools. But we are too optimistic because we tend to think that these tools automatically enable us to be smarter, automatically enable us to be democratic. And all those are myths. Personally, I find it gendered space. Men dominate, and we found that in some of the arrangements here, but I'm not going to go into that. You know, men have a way of mansplaining everything. And that comes through in the internet because male voices dominate. We also have the way in which African scholars and a lot of scholars are very arrogant in their relationship with others because we think we have specialized knowledge and people should just listen. We don't need to listen very carefully. We know what to do. We'll tell you if you do it, everything is going to be okay. Now, we have been telling people things are not okay. So let's change our ways, be more humble, and make our work digestible to the people that we want to reach. Let's become more organic. So that's what I want to argue here. In terms of youth unemployment, I focused on just those 3 countries because I was a consultant for the UNECA. That's what they wanted. But what I'm saying applies to all of Africa. We have a youth population that's large and growing. If we're going to succeed as a continent in terms of all the agenda, 2030, 2063, and all the things that the AU says it wants to do, we have to, it's true, sustainable development is our goal, but how are we getting there? I think Africa, for me, is very disorganized, is very uninspiring. And when I go to African gatherings of a high level, there are too many Europeans there wasting our time telling us what to do. Are we not gathered enough to be able to have these meetings and propose things and then go ahead and do them? So this is a distress of mine. Are we really ready to engage? If we are ready to engage, let's take the youth seriously. They have something to say, but they're disillusioned. And their responses to many of the conundrums in which we find ourselves have been very explosive. And they see the government, and as a matter of fact, us of the older generation, as very nonchalant about their predicament and their plight. If we want peace and we want enhanced human security and sustainable development, we need to be more creative in our policy making. And when I talk about epistemic communities, us scholars have to help to design these policies. But as a scholar who is a woman who is excluded from many of these corridors of power, I have to say again, male dominant space, there's a selectiveness about whom we consult, and we are not putting our best foot forward in terms of identifying who has something to say, who really knows what to do, and including them in order to build the better future that we say we are interested in. For peace and enhanced human security, we need the strategies, the creative policies that transform and also create opportunities out of the threats. I am very angry when people say we have a youth bulge. And they talk about the youth as if they're this explosive bomb that is going to just be set off. The youth, we have a huge youth population. They are an asset. And we need to harness their collective energies. We need to mentor youth. We need to be accessible to them in different ways than we have been. I know we are all very busy people. To what extent is each and every person here gathered, available when that young person says, read my paper for me, please, you know, even though they're not your student? To what extent are we, you know, just doing the stuff we need to do to be good role models, not just in the words we speak, but in our actions? I have to say, the reason I'm saying all this is I do that, and it takes a lot of my time. I'm not as productive as the people who have written 200 books, and I'm okay with that. So how are we going to do this? Be available to the youth, okay? Advocate, even for courses that you don't have any direct benefit for. And I do that also, which is why I'm saying this to you. We also need to expand employment opportunities for youth. You are telling them to be entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs with what? Who is going to buy this stuff that they're producing? You know, so what is it that youth are going to do concretely that will improve their lives? You know, we need to really think about this, provide it for them. Tell me when my 5 minutes are up. Also,
they're actually up, my sister, they're actually up, but I'll give you 1 minute to
okay. So
conclude
our
your
country's
remarks, because
development
we'll have an
plans,
opportunity to answer questions.
yeah, our country's development plans are uninspiring, terrible. Let's help them to write better plans. And then let us be on the backs of our government to implement these plans. We need to also have, you know, data collection must be more solid. Sometimes I think we're not interested in knowing what's happening. And that's why we have this slipshod, you know, non-disaggregated data that really does not collect anything. For example, the figures on COVID-19, I am not really believing what I'm hearing about, oh, this is the number of people that are infected, and these are the number of deaths. So we need to do better. All of us here can decide on what issue area is our area of competence. And then we have to lobby, we have to persuade, we have to push and get in the mix in order to make the better Africa that we all want to see. And in doing this, we also have to motivate youth to see that we're on their side. We work with them, we inspire, we connect them with resources that they need. And in terms of doing this, the universities are an arena where this can happen. But I also have my gripe about the universities. I'm not going to talk anymore. We have Q&A, and I can share my work with people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Oke, for sharing, as usual, very provocative ideas. The next person is Professor Samuel Zalanga, who is in sociology and political science, Bethel University, St. Paul, Minnesota. And his topic is the challenge of social change in Africa in the era of neoliberal globalization. So Professor Zalanga, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity to share some of my thoughts.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Please,
yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So it's a great opportunity for me to share my thoughts, and let me put it in context. I know that I have 5 minutes, and given the fact that we have very limited time, I will try to be very concise, even if I'm unable to talk about all that I plan to say. But I come into this conversation because I grew up in the northeastern part of Nigeria, and I became very fascinated later with the subaltern literature because I really grew up in a rural area. And when I went to the university, I got this professor who is a Ghanaian. He was at Michigan, one of the universities in Michigan, and he was teaching us social theory, and he introduced me to the Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution, the Scientific Revolution, and the Agricultural Revolution. And I was very, very excited to read that. I would go to the reserve section of the library, try to understand how did Europe make the transition from the medieval period to the modern period. And the idea was not that Africa or Nigeria would replicate that exactly, but how can we do that? There are different strategies of doing that. And this is still something that I'm very passionate about. So when I went to do my undergraduate studies, I knew that my education was going to improve my status, but that was not really my priority. My priority was, given the fact that I was from a rural community, what can that do to make a difference in that rural community? So this is how I come into this conversation. And as Professor Okome said, who is my mentor, I feel very disappointed with the things happening in Africa because I look at development from the bottom up rather than from the top. So the first issue, based on my experience teaching twice using the Carnegie Fellowship, is just the question, does Africa want to be part of the modern world? Okay, do we want to become part of the modern world? And if we really want to become part of the modern world, what are the minimum requirements? I always tell people like that in Africa that there's a lot of injustice in the modern world. We can talk about that. I don't want to digress, but we were incorporated into the modern system, in the modern world system, not based on our own interests or whatever, but I don't think we can reverse it, as Weber really said. So, but if we're going to be active players, irrespective of the system the way it is, what are the minimum requirements that are needed at different levels, cultural level, political level, and institutional level? And I think this is the place where I feel very disappointed with a lot of African leaders and a lot of even leaders in the university, because this doesn't seem to be a question that many people really address. So that's one of the things that I've been very, very concerned about. And then the other thing is this, the way people teach economics. I found out that given the literature I've been exposed to, I'm a sociologist interested in development, but I feel the kind of economics that is taught in many Nigerian universities is very superficial. It doesn't deal with the critical issues that people really need to know. And there's quite a lot of debate about what is the best way for you to use, or the best economic strategy for development. The book by Piketty, Capital in the 21st Century, has raised this issue really, really very clearly, that you cannot just say that there's one single way that every country will have to follow. And then the third thing that I want to really talk about is how even the AU seems to be just comfortable with this idea of the neoliberal agenda. We want Pan-Africanism, but this Pan-Africanism is going to take place in a world that is neoliberal. But then when you look at the assumptions of neoliberalism, you just wonder whether it is something that the African Union really realized that, because it's a system that really believes in there are going to be winners and losers. It is informed very much by libertarian way of thinking in many respects, and I'm very, very concerned about that. So for me, I think it is just simplistic to talk about Pan-Africanism when you know that you're dealing with this thing called neoliberalism the way we really know it. I think African countries have to be courageous to come up, as other countries have done, to raise fundamental questions about how we can tamper with this new liberal ideology so that it can work for the ordinary people of Africa. And then the other thing regarding technology, which is my fourth point, second to the last, is just that I remember in my teaching, I came across the ideas of Kwame Nkrumah and Jawaharlal Nehru saying that if Africa, or if countries that were former colonies, want to really develop, they have to master science and technology, among other things. They cannot just be consuming those things. And I remember reading in Franz Fanon, Wretched of the Earth, in a chapter called The Pitfalls of National Consciousness, where he was saying that the post-colonial African bourgeoisie has no intellectual curiosity. He's just interested in consuming foreign products, flaunting it as a mark of distinction, but not asking what kind of civilization produces and why can't our civilization really produce that. So I think I agree with Jawaharlal Nehru and Kwame Nkrumah that this mastery of science and technology is very important. We have to develop a capacity for that in Africa. And I don't see that when you go even to the universities. I don't see serious effort in that respect. And then finally, what I want to just say is just that with regard to the Agenda 2063, this issue of technology, as Professor Okome said, I agree with her that this whole question of relying on technology as a panacea to human problems, I think is really simplistic. There was a time I was invited to make a presentation in Nigeria by eNigeria on using machines for elections or something like that. And in my preparation, this will be my concluding statement. One of the insights I came across during my preparation was just this saying by somebody that from time immemorial, there are people who are honest, people who are kind and there are people who are cruel. There are people who do not care about other people. And what technology gave each one of them is the opportunity to do more of what they really want to do. In other words, if we do not introduce some kind of ethical and moral compass in all this, even if there's sophisticated technology in Africa, it is going to be used in a manner that will probably contribute to injustice. So I'm not opposed to technology, but I am very concerned that it is not a panacea to our problems if we do not infuse that with some kind of moral and ethical commitment that sees the human dignity of all as very important. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Zalanga, for those provocative remarks. I'm sure that people in the who are participating will have questions for all of you, Professor Okome and yourself, and the next speakers. Our next speaker is Professor Florence Wakoko Studstill, who is the coordinator of the sociology program, Department of Criminal Justice and Sociology, Columbus State University. And her topic is investing in women and girls for structural the case of us. Please, Professor Wakoko Studstill, you have the floor.
She's muted. Dr. Florence.
Hello?
She's muted.
Okay, sorry. Okay. Can you hear me now?
So,
Okay, good. I say good morning,
Yes.
good afternoon.
Yes,
good
please
evening,
go right
everyone.
ahead.
All
Thank you.
right. Thank you. I looked at this from the point of view of asking myself, what can I do and what can we do as scholars, as researchers? Because since the launch of the Agenda 2063, there has been continuous shifts in terms of manufacturing, turning into the service industry, gradually, slowly. That means that a number of people have lost jobs, are continuing to lose jobs. We have youths who are graduating from college, they have no jobs. And then we have rural women particularly, who used to survive on what you call smallholder farming, who have gone through a series of transformations from smallholder farming to commercial farming. And then now with the lack of jobs, and accompanied with that is the growing technological advancement, where even teaching and learning is now requiring intellectual capacity in terms of technology. So with all that going on, where is the African woman and the African girl? What can they do? How can we support them? In my presentation, I'm sorry I can't show you here, but I do have a model which I want to share with you, and that is a model that focuses on how we can get this done, just as part of a way of solving the puzzle. So this model is focused on empowering women to empower themselves. First of all, when I did my fellowship, I had 2 fellowships in 2014 at Makerere University, and then in 2017 at Sokoine University of Agriculture in Tanzania. Makerere University is in Uganda, just in case. I worked with my colleague, we are both of us, Dr. Margaret Haiza, who happens to be here too. And one of the things we did in addition to teaching and curriculum development was to go ahead and establish an organization which is a non-governmental organization, which focuses on training women, giving them those technical skills that they need so that they can also help others. With the realization that for so long, there are some women who are educated. There are some women who are placed in high positions of power, but there are barriers that they cannot even move forward. And barriers in a sense that they are lacking strictly support or mentorship, which Professor Okome mentioned here. And so the starting of this organization, which is called Higher Education Resource Services, or HASI, was to help women, particularly in higher education, to be trained and be leaders so that they can also aspire to be vice chancellors, or they can aspire to go beyond that, become even ministers of education and so on and so forth. But that's not enough, because at the grassroots level, as I mentioned, there are struggles. There are women who feel isolated, both because of marginalization and also because of geographical isolation. And so with that, you find even the girls that are being raised in households where women are also struggling to survive, these girls also end up becoming prey to the challenges of the day. So the HAS East Africa trains women, besides enabling them to be leaders and aspire to be decision makers, to training them to also become role models and mentor the young girls. The point that Professor Okome alluded to, that is, we have to be practical and go ahead and turn around things rather than becoming just scholars and remaining questioning, inquisitive, and not solving problems. So has accomplished much. Since 2016, we launched the organization with the support of the fellowship from Carnegie. And with that support, we were able to launch the HAS East Africa. It is an organization that brings together women from all over East African countries. So that includes Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, Rwanda, Ethiopia, name it. They all come together depending on their abilities to be able to attend the conferences and receive training. So since the launch, over 200 women have been trained. And trainings take place every year. Every year, the annual academy is held, and so far they have been held in Uganda at Makerere University. But there is room for us to expand and go to other places. So why am I saying all this? There's information on the website, and maybe I will send the link, or Evelyn will help because she has my presentation so that everybody can have access to this whole presentation. But I'm saying this because when we train or we focus on helping one group, we should not forget that we need a trickle down, so that we can help those ones who don't have voices or whose voices are muted. At the same time, we realize that the question of youth training is critical. And because most of the girls fall within that category, we have, through Higher Education Resource Services, we have been able to empower women by helping them learn how to make sanitary pads. This realization came as a result that so many girls are dropping out of school, and statistics show that either they miss school or they are failing to continue with school throughout the year because of their monthly period. And so this idea, the new technology of how to make affordable sanitary pads, is something that has launched on and has been working to help. How we do that? We train mothers, the mothers in the villages, mothers who are mothers of the girls who go to school. So when mothers come together and learn how to make those sanitary pads, they are able to help their daughters sell also those sanitary pads and get some income to help them survive. So there is a kind of help that runs from mother to daughter and also to the community. Those are simple ways in how we can help revitalize our communities and also respond positively towards the Agenda 2063. So as a scholar and someone who was born and raised in Uganda, in a village where I struggled to walk miles and miles to go to school, and also where we were dismissed from school because we were not able to pay the school fees as required at a particular time, and also witnessing how some students or kids who came from a little better off families were able actually to continue with the school while others are dropping out. I come to realize that we who are educated, who have the capabilities, should take the responsibility and at least help someone. So through the Carnegie Fellowship, I have made friends, I have made connections, and able to at least mentor someone, help someone with the dissertation, help someone with even paying school fees for some of them, because that's the experience I learned while I was doing my fellowship. Some of them don't even have the money to survive to be in the university setting. So there are some micro level type of help that we can provide besides at the personal level, besides going through the big formal enterprises or organizations or non-government organizations. I want to challenge everybody here, and I know you do. As fellows coming from Africa, we have so many people who depend on us. And I know we help a lot. But my point here is that go beyond your family, because that person who doesn't belong to your family can be pushed out of school. They are lacking school fees or uniforms, but you are able to help, you can go ahead and help. So the last point I want to make here is solely to focus on HAS. About HAS is that this is a model we can share with other institutions, with other individuals. It's a model which was started by HAS United States. There's a higher education resource services here in the United States, centered in Colorado. And so we are an affiliate of that HAS United States. So then after that, there's another HAS, which is South Africa, and then there's another HAS in Nigeria. So we have HAS Nigeria, HAS South Africa, and HAS East Africa. If we can, we associate ourselves with those organizations, we can help to solve some of the problems that women and girls are facing. Those are just part of the puzzle, so that they are able to thrive within this transformative society that we are all experiencing today.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm sure there will be opportunity to elaborate if people want to raise questions. Our fourth speaker is Professor Julia Ugoji, who is Interim Dean of Nursing and Allied Health, North Hennepin Community College, Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. And her topic is Advancing African Healthcare System, Global Nursing Education, a Must. Please, Professor Ugoji, go ahead.
Good morning, professional colleagues. Good morning, brothers and sisters. Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, sir. I am so thrilled and excited to be among all the scholars here. The theme of this discussion, Sustainable Development 2020, is really critical. I just want to start by saying, is anyone having a headache this morning? Is any of us here have a headache? You do? I'm sorry, we caused that for you. The reason I ask that question is a healthy nation is a wealthy nation. And again, I'm gonna say that it is health that is real wealth and not a pieces of gold and silver. And that is from Mahatma Gandhi. You know, African issue, I mean, we cause the problem, and I'm sure we are the one to solve those problems. You know, we are very good in talking. When it comes to implementation, it becomes a huge problem. That's Africa for you. Diaspora, we can do so much, but homebound, our leaders, our culture, if we don't address it, it's gonna be a big problem. So why is nursing education, globalization of nursing education a must? I am a nurse. I've been a nurse for over 40 years. I started my nursing education all the way from Africa, Nigeria, and I don't regret any day I spent in the classroom for those period of education. What did I do when I came to US? I enhanced what I knew already, improved my education, and know better. America say you know better, and I know better. I'm saying this again because studies have shown, while I was looking at literature, many of the studies show that 0, 10, 1% to 20, 70% of African doctors and nurses are practicing outside the world, outside Africa. What does that tell you? That's why when our presidents are sick, they fly to US, China, wherever, where they can get the best health. But when you come to Nigeria or even in Europe or in US, majority of the best doctors are from Africa, here in US. But they can't practice in Africa because what? The leaders will not allow them. They don't have the resources to practice. They don't have the equipment. But why am I so worried about nursing education? I'm gonna share what Nigerian Nurses Association in North America is doing. I'm a member of the Nigerian Nurses Association. I was a past national president. I'm a current board member now. I'm the founder and president of DC, Maryland. We call it DMV. What are we doing? As I speak now, we are having a 5-day conference webinar going on here in Nigeria. So they're calling it rebranding the image of nursing in Nigeria because nobody cares about nurses. But when you go to a hospital, who do you see 24 hours in your bedside? It's a nurse. The doctors come and do their prescriptions and they go. But the curriculum we had when I went to Nigeria is not the best. When I came here, it's like starting all over again because those are man-made problems. You know, we're trying to improve nursing education in Nigeria, but there's a clause in the Nigerian constitution that said, you know, the nurses must be under the doctors. In US, they're not. They're autonomy. Everybody is practicing at the level of their expertise in other, developed countries. But African countries will not allow that because what? Because of personal interests. So if we can utilize, if Cameroon Nurses Association are functioning the way Nigerian nurses are functioning, Tanzanian nurses in US are functioning the way Nigerian nurses in US are functioning, other African Nurses Association in US, there are many of them are here, but they're not like at the level of Nigerian nurses in US. We volunteer our time, we volunteer ourselves, we volunteer our expertise. When Carnegie granted me that opportunity, I went to 2 universities in Nigeria, Imo State University and University of Benin, developed a clinical tool education for BSN program. Now that program is in place, running heavily. The school can now talk to the clinical side. Before there was no relationship. Students, not everybody knows when the students come to school and they go. So I started in Rwanda for 1 year when I was teaching at University of Maryland. Rwanda has an MOU with the US for 7 good years. I served 2 years. I was part of that program. Rwanda is going to have one of the best healthcare systems in the world now. Rwanda is the cleanest country in Africa. If you go to Rwanda, you don't want to live in Nigeria. I can live in Rwanda tomorrow. I don't want to live in Nigeria because you're sick. I mean, you'll be thinking about saying your last prayers. Why did that happen? Because the president wanted it to happen. So if other presidents can emulate, and that brings me to collaboration and partnership. If other African presidents can collaborate with presidents like Rwanda president in their healthcare system, there'll be change. Rwanda curriculum now is more or less like curriculum used in the US because many schools, University of Maryland, Harvard University, many universities in US developed that BSN and MSN curriculum. I was one of those. You know, so but like I'm gonna use Nigeria again. We keep answering this name, giant of Africa. Collaboration. When you come to our healthcare system, it's nothing to write home about. But when you come to criminal, fraudulent behaviors, you see us in the first 10, all African countries. Why? So, my dear, I think healthcare is a must. If we want to achieve this sustainable development agenda 2020, you can't do nothing if you're having a headache. You won't be here this morning. If you've been admitted in the hospital for COVID or for whatever reason, you can be here. So it is high time we really need to think back. We are our own problem and we are the ones to solve those problems. I collaborate, I work so much here in the US, with the government. When I come, I say it, some of us wouldn't like it. We our own problem, and we have to design the solution to those problems. So in that addition, in nursing education, we need to work, each country needs to work with the Board of Nursing. Nursing and Midwifery Council of Nigeria is now working with National Association of Nigeria in US, in North America. We invited the secretary, he came here, we took him to Texas Board of Nursing, New York Board of Nursing, and he saw how nursing can be on their own and run. But not until Nigeria decided to do it right, allow a nurse to be in charge of nursing department, it's not gonna work. Not until Nigeria understand that a lawyer cannot be the commissioner for health, it's not gonna work. So what am I saying? We really need to, we know our problem, not that to identify, we know our problem. We just need to tell ourselves the truth and move forward. So I'm very grateful to Carnegie for giving us the space, the platform, so that those of us who like to volunteer, I like to volunteer, so giving us that space to continue to do what we are doing. Professor Florence said, I volunteer so much. I like money, but majority of the time, money doesn't move me so much. When people say thank you, I go to medical mission in Nigeria twice every year or once a year. I was supposed to be, we are supposed to be in Nigeria in August, but the COVID, my ticket is still hanging. So
Okay.
what with those people, we give us the opportunity to restructure, to change, if we really want to accomplish this. And I'm going to conclude by saying the future we want needs to be invented. Otherwise, we will get the one we don't want. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very inspiring, last statement. If we have to invent the future we want. Our next speaker is Professor Esther Obonyo, who is with the Global Building Network. She's the Global Building Network Director and Associate Professor of Engineering Design and Architectural Engineering at one of my old schools in the US, Pennsylvania State University. Professor Obonyo, this is your floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the organizers of this panel, Henry, the moderator, and everybody who's participating right now. I'm going to be brief because we're running out of time. I wanted to spend a few minutes just reflecting on the future of international partnerships for and using my area of expertise, disaster resilient housing. My story started at the University of Nairobi. I was in what at that time was called ADD, Architecture, Design and Development. And we had this paradox that we go to class and we learn about very Western concepts, and then we walk outside and we see structures, prototypes that are being done by Professor Siaga and his team for alternative building materials. The two worlds never met. We never learned anything about building technology that's based on the use of locally available resources and techniques that learn from the African context. Fast forward, I go to Europe, continue with the Western knowledge, did my PhD in artificial intelligence, came to the University of Florida, where because of the presence of a strong Center for African Studies, they pulled me into looking at the use of locally available knowledge, techniques, and materials, and we find ways of integrating them with modern systems. The Carnegie program has been valuable. On 2 occasions, I've gone back to Nairobi, once looking at building materials in collaboration with people at the University of Nairobi. And then the second time I went to Mount Kenya University and we worked with someone who's on the health side of the equation. So mapping on health data on that. So the project that we are currently doing is building on all these things, and I'm excited about it because for the first time in my career, my artificial intelligence world, which involves data, sensors, etc., has combined with the local context. During COVID, the capacity and also the support that we are getting from one another, both in Kenya and here in Tanzania, not Tanzania, but US, we are realizing that because we cannot travel, we have to rely on generating data using the people who have boots on the ground. The team in Nairobi is doing a fantastic job. We had a meeting this morning that gives me hope that going forward, Africa does really have a space where they can start to define the agenda for resilient housing, resilient urban systems. We are pulling in students into the conversation for mentoring. We are working out ways of including junior professionals into the equation. And in short, I'm just very excited about the possibilities, and we welcome your participation in our partnership that is beginning to pave way for things which are being controlled by the African scientists, because as I said, we are relying 100% on data that they will be generating on the ground. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. That was like a true scientist, very brief to the point, and within less than the 5 minutes that you are allocated. So thank you for that. The final speaker is Professor Henry Bule. Please forgive me if I've mispronounced your name. Social sciences. You pronounce it rightly for me, if not for everybody else later. Social sciences and humanities, as well as in the CRJ department, City University of New York in New York. And his topic is harnessing Earth observation and geospatial technologies to improve livelihoods of Africans. Please go right ahead.
Thank you very much. I have to clarify, my name is Henry Bole, and I always joke I'm not a bully. But my route to this particular session here,
go right ahead.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
So my route to the Carnegie Fellowship and participating up to today actually starts with the African woman. And I'm going to say this because for some reason, some of us will not be where we are. Women, mothers dedicate for children, but the resilience of African women. I'm a young African. I grew up in Ghana. I saw what happened to the Mokola woman and the resilience with which they came up to sort of adapt. Why am I saying this? I was doing my PhD when along the line, I thought I was done, everything looks good, and I got a message my mom has passed away. It made me sort of shy away from anything that had to do with Africa. Once I finished my PhD and I'm into geospatial sciences, I started focusing on the Himalaya area. That was a nice way not to think about Africa. But at some point, I have to sit down and ask myself, you can be working elsewhere where there are issues where you grew up that can be addressed. So that brought me into more redesigning or refocusing my work. And I started looking more at landscape ecology, watershed management, geospatial science, sustainable development. I started webinars, and then I started mostly, I'll have these workshops. But still, I would do it without going to Africa. I would do it here or in Europe. It was in one of those I was looking for funding for Africans that I got in touch with Carnegie Fellowship. In 2016, I went to Uganda. I went to the African Association of Remote Sensing Conference, and I organized a workshop there. We introduced landscape ecology. 2019, I went back to Ghana and Uganda, did a stakeholder workshop on flood mapping in Ghana, as well as do flood mapping in Uganda. Now, one of the things I want to highlight is in the Agenda 2063, there's this aspect that is of interest to me, outer space strategy, that is using space technology or space products to enhance sustainable development. I think it's feasible. Countries in Africa are trying to do that, but then the most important thing, as our first speaker have mentioned, is developing capacity and actually collaborating with each other. Because more often than not, we tend to compete with each other instead of collaborating. So what I've learned is not just collaborating here in the US, but also finding a way to collaborate with our colleagues in Africa. Many times collaborating doesn't mean, because I'm in the US, I know everything, but then we have that humility to say, I may have access to technology, I may have access to the resources, but my folks that have returned home, they also have access to the know-how. How do we put the two pieces together? And this is what led to what we did, what do you call it, a data-based collection. So what we are doing now is anybody in Africa and in the US, in Europe, that has anything to do with geospatial science, using satellite data, using GIS. Most of us are aware of GPS, Google Earth. Anybody that is doing anything of that, so we building a database so that we can link up and connect with each other, seamlessly work with each other. One of the key things, and I think Professor Fume mentioned rightly, the young. Many times they're looking for a project. And I will have to mention not just those in Africa, but sometimes you have a student who comes here for graduate studies. They try to figure out what to do. They don't know how to go about it. They end up doing a topic that is here, but their passion would have been to do something back home. This is a database, a platform, a community that will allow the young and then the more experienced to collaborate in such a way that will cross-fertilize. So that is one thing that this database development is coming across. The other thing I want to mention is many times we have functions and events that happen, and then Professor Fume mentioned sessions are organized for us, or sometimes we ask for sessions and we give it at one. I want to mention something that came up for my first visit. After having a good evening at the conference, myself and my colleagues, quite a number from South Africa, from Ivory Coast to Nigeria was one couple. And we asked, how do we enhance and move forward with this collaboration? Then it came to light, there's this GEO conference that had been happening every year, but many times you don't have sessions on Africa. You see Africans there, but going to different sessions. So we try to organize a session, and we call it AfriGeos, that is Africa Geo Information Systems, strengthening partnership with African diaspora on Earth observations. Interestingly, the moment we started this, we got the big names in the world coming in to tell us, I've got this project and I want to share this project I'm doing. And I'm talking about from Copernicus in Europe to other programs in Australia. And we said, no, we want this to be about what we are doing, how we want it to do. And I will have to indicate to you, it wasn't easy just holding the line and say, we want to do it, even if we don't have the big names, we want to make this about Africans for Africans. And it was very successful. What I want to also indicate, especially coming into context of this session, is all these are good. It's been working very well, but something that caught my attention and opened my eyes was when I was in Uganda last year. And I have this thing, we were going to do flood mapping, and we talk about how to do it, but then it's flood mapping in the low income or the informal settlement. Honestly, my thinking is, okay, we got to get some people and go out there. And then quickly I learned, you can't just go to this community. So we have to reach out. How do we do it? We reach out to the local Red Cross and they said, yes, we can help you, but you have to go through the local leadership. Before the day, I actually have to learn from them some of the things they expect and some of the expectations when they are working there. And then the day of the event itself, the community mapping, one of the Red Cross, volunteers actually have to talk to the students, because even within the same countries, the students at Makerere University, this informal settlement is no more than 10 minutes from them. They have no idea what goes on there. So for them to understand that when you are in there, there are certain things you don't do with them. They are just about your people. They may be living in a different condition. I have to admit, we went in there and almost everybody put on a Red Cross jacket. The moment they see us, everybody was welcoming. The local leaders came up, they said, we heard about you, and they were talking to us. It was very, very effective. The students actually learned a lot. And for me, what I learned is it's not about going out there with a technology and doing something, but understanding where you're going and doing it in a way that will meet the needs of the people. Professor Florence is here, Celestial is here, but I think I learned about this, and you can correct me. What do you call it again? Omuntu 116, right? And I said, what is it? He said, during the elections, every politician talks about it. It's about finding long-term solutions to help the people, the disadvantaged. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting term to use, because if we have to lift Africa up, it's not about the bourgeoisie that to show off all the things we picked up from the developed countries, but actually lifting up our weaker link. And if satellite technology, if geospatial technology is going to help us do that, that's one of my key interests in doing it. And adding the African studies it's about, for us in the technology areas, and that's one of the things that led to this session. The ASA, some of us will never dream to go there for a conference because we're like, what do I need there? But when we start to realize that whether we are in geospatial technology, engineering technology, architectural engineering, or nursing, medicine, we all need to fit this within the context of what we want to do, and that's within the context of Africa. And I'll pause here. I hope I didn't go too much of my 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. We are at 2 after the hour, and perhaps Evelyn, you can advise how much more time we have.
And you want to say something about that?
Yes, how much time?
I said the session have to go 2 hours, depending on how long we want to stay, but that depends on what we have here. But I decided to give
let's try maybe to because people, I'm sure they have other things to do, but this is a very important conversation. Let's try to stay for another half hour or so in terms of Q&A, in which, of course, you can elaborate on some of the issues you have presented. I must say that this was a very robust set of presentations. I learned a lot and appreciate the passion with which people are sharing their commitment based on their specific areas of expertise in trying to make a difference for Africa with regards to development, whether we are talking about health, we're talking about education, we're talking about engineering, we're talking about technology, or we're talking about any other area, but certainly in terms of gender, issues of class, and so on and so forth. It's been very, very invigorating. I think what we can do is, if you can pose your questions on the chat. I see there are a lot of comments, but if you can, sort of raise your hand so that we can give you an opportunity to ask your question. As we are thinking of that, let me begin by asking a question, because this is about Agenda 23, the AU's agenda. What are the key actors? All of you are talking about different actors, but if we are to identify the key actors in Africa and how they can be mobilized and synergized for Agenda 2063. What would be these key actors? One of you, of course, was talking about the key actors that to pay attention to, and how do we mobilize them? So let me just go around the table just to make sure that everybody's given a chance to talk. If I can start with Dr. Zaga, if you can maybe address that, and then somebody else can, chip in if they have an extra idea.
Dr. who? Sorry.
Samuel Zalanga.
Okay.
Well, I think my reaction to that question is that I know that we need our elites to play an important role, but what I see and I'm very concerned about is when I was in Nigeria, I traveled to the rural areas. I'm not impressed by what is written in the newspapers. Actually, it brought a great sense of humility to me, because sometimes I thought you could just write something from the United States and change things in Africa, but I found out that the great majority of people are at the grassroots level, and sometimes they are not even part of the conversation. So while I know that our elites have an important role to play, the key issue for me is how do you really mobilize the people at the bottom of the pyramid? Because no matter what economic growth we have in Africa, if it doesn't reach those people at the bottom of the pyramid, to me, I'm not impressed by that. And as I said in my brief introduction of what I wrote, that right now, one of the things that is traumatizing me is that probably I'm going to die without seeing Africa reach a certain level of development. And when I say Africa, I do not mean just kind of like that. I know there are elites that are really doing very well, but the problem I have is those people who are really there at the bottom. How can we really engage them? Most of them are just living on their own. When I visit some places in the northwestern part of Nigeria, like Zamfara, you know, they are just on their own. The state doesn't seem to make any difference in their lives. So the key actors here for me is these grassroots people. How do we get them involved? Okay. And it's a very long conversation. I don't have the time to get into the details, but my greatest concern is how, if we're going to do that, we will have to pay a price a little bit for that, because we're used to living in the United States. It's very comfortable or whatever. When you think about even doing something in Africa, some people talk as if it's the end of the world. And I feel very embarrassed about that. Like, if you're going to do something in Africa, people feel like it's the end of the world, but that's where I grew up. And I feel like no matter how comfortable I live in the United States, if Africa is where it is, I'm not going to feel comfortable. So what are we going to sacrifice as people living in the diaspora, or the doctors, or whatever, all these people that have been trained? What can we do to really reach these people at the grassroots level? Otherwise, sometimes it looks to me like firing missiles, like the way the United States fires missiles from a distance, instead of being there on the ground. I do feel that about myself sometimes. Thank you.
Yeah, so the elite, the grassroots, and of course the state, we take for granted. But Professor Okome mentions in
Professor Okome has been
that
raising her hand.
youth. Yes, yes, please, can you elaborate on some of these issues?
So,
what
you know, I think that you cannot
the key actors,
do anything.
the youth, of course, being very important.
We can't do anything without the state. The state is, you know, and I think we need a different, a reorganization of the state, both in terms of conceptualizing what the state means and what its role should be in development. Look, I guess I'm the only one that knows here that there was an understanding based on nationalist struggles for independence that said that the state is going to be concerned about the welfare and well-being of the population, that the social contract is that we have to have states that prioritize the interest of the masses. This is what we fought for independence. So we need a state that is awakened to its responsibility, not a neoliberal nonsense state, as exists in many African countries, where people think they should be serving their interests and those of their cronies and not those of the masses of the people. So we need a state that is worth its salt, number one. Number two, we're a young population in the continent. About 60% of the population or more are the youth. There are a substantial interest that must be prioritized. Otherwise, we're never going to have an end to all these uprisings because we are neglecting their interests. And they have something to say, so let's take the wax out of our ears and hear them. Number three is us, the scholars. What is our responsibility? As organically connected with our people. You know what, I'm also very, very upset with this idea that you are dealing with tabula rasa, there's nothing. Let us remember history. When I was at the University of Ibadan, from 1976 to 1979, there were people who came from the frontline states in Southern Africa that were fighting against apartheid and the people that supported them. There were people who came from the US to study vet medicine, to study medicine in Nigeria, okay? Some of them came from Harvard. Now we let the World Bank and the IMF and all these Western countries tell us that we should stop spending on tertiary education. Go and read the Berg Plan.
Someone's at your door.
I'm sorry, technology is intruding. So read the Berg Plan produced by the World Bank. It said that we should concentrate on primary education. Tertiary education is a luxury for Africa. We are paying the consequences, we're reaping the consequences of that stupid decision-making, of listening to these people because we were over a barrel and we had the debt crisis. And so A lot of what we're seeing today, they didn't happen because Africans decided, they got together, they said, we are clueless, we're just going, well, we're taking advice from all these evil institutions. Now they are saying, because I heard Lagarde, before she left the IMF, saying that all these neoliberal policies are creating inequality and we shouldn't do them anymore. So how about all the lives that have been wrecked? So if the nurses in Nigeria are going through stress, it's because of neoliberalism. So we need to connect and do, we need to connect and do interdisciplinary analysis where we're really aware of the consequences of historical decisions that we have taken and how to solve it. And then I want to say, I know hardworking, brilliant people in Nigeria. I gave an example of some of the sequencing of the DNA of COVID-19. Nigerians did it without help from anybody. In Senegal, you have people who also are doing work on COVID-19, who are even selling some of this to other African countries. There are efforts in the African continent. What we don't have is a really coordinated way of thinking about our various national interests and projecting that in a powerful way in the world. And we have people, we have everything we need. So we need to get our acts together and plan and then implement as serious people. We don't, it's not a situation of we don't have anything, the diaspora is going to bring something.
Right. Yeah. Now you've mentioned a lot of important actors, but one actor I've not heard in the answers is the private sector. What is the role of the private sector in Africa's development agenda? We can address that one.
I can say something.
Oh,
again,
okay.
This is the.
Please, yes.
Can you hear me? This is
Yeah.
Dr. Goji. I think
Goji, yes, please go right ahead.
It's a collective effort. There's no one item, the youth, the mother, the father, that is not going to be on the table for effective change if we want Africa to change. Again, is African problem, it has to be African solution. And we cannot isolate whatever we call constitution we have now. All those clauses embedded in African constitution that are making people not to move forward. We can't isolate them and come up with agenda that is not going to work. You develop something here and take it home. Frustration alone will not allow you to stay and implement it. You know, so it's everybody, the private sector, the youth, the leaders. Again, if there is a way to eliminate the kind of leaders we have in Africa, I think it will be a good thing. I don't know how, you know, and see if the youth have a different orientation, you know, because how can you go to university, you don't have a job? I mean, what are you gonna do other than to go to robbery? That's what you're gonna do in Ghana, in Nigeria, in anywhere in Africa. But if the leaders can put themselves together and allow the diaspora, give them opportunity to use the skills and knowledge we have, you know, gotten from the developed countries, to use it in our countries. I mean, it's not magic. It's not a rocket science. But whatever that is on ground is what is our problem. You know, Africans, we are all doing very well individually. Right. I don't trust anybody here, and I'm sure all of you here don't trust me.
Paul,
so how can we work?
Paul.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. We are very well individually,
yeah,
but
I have,
we can work together.
Yes. We have 3 people who have their hands up, and I would like them to ask their questions, and they can direct them to a particular individual, or they can just make a point. And let's be very brief in the interest of time. The first one is Alungu, and then Philomena, and then third, Emmanuel. So if we can have those in that order.
Okay.
Yes, yes, you come in third.
Okay.
Thank you. So Alungu had the hand raised on the chat.
Mr. Joe, you are on mute. Joe Atungu.
Yes, please.
He's talking, but he's muted.
Oh, he's muted. Please unmute.
Okay, now he's good. Go
He's
ahead.
still muted. He's muted.
Yes, please.
Let's see
Thank
if
you.
we can unmute him. Let's see.
Why you are
Yes, please unmute him. Give him the freedom to talk.
He's trying to come up.
What's his name again?
Okay.
Can I go on,
Okay.
Tungu?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes,
No, let's
All right,
let's
yeah.
have Dr. Philomena Okeke
Okay, good.
to yeah, please, Philomena. It's good to see you after so many years.
Yeah, okay, I'm glad you said that. Anyway, I'm so glad to see.
But it's a good expression.
I am just so I'm so excited, and of course, if technology permits, I'll just jump up and hug every one of you. I just want to say thank you that we are talking about mine is simply a comment. We're talking about something very, very complicated. The complexity is unimaginable, and sometimes it looks like just a blind person trying to touch various parts of an elephant. What I really want to say that I would like, before we end this, to come up with some kind of agenda, some kind of message to go back with, because we need to keep working on it. What it tells me at the end of this discussion is that I'm further sensitized. I want to see some kind of way forward. If there's some kind of another meeting or somewhere to go from here, it doesn't take too many people to change the world. So I really want to see something like that from this meeting.
Okay.
Shed light on a lot of
Thank
things.
you very much. Emmanuel Babatunde, please
Yeah,
go ahead.
Babatunde. Yes, thank you, Paul. First of all, I agree with a lot of what Professor Okome said, and also Professor Bully also reiterated some aspects of it, that we really didn't think that Africa will not take off. Even, we were thinking that before our old age, Africa will take off. But Africa is not taking off. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear
Yes,
you.
loud and clear.
The state, to identify it, the state has to be strengthened. Leadership of the state needs to be much more inclusive and respectful of intelligent people who can cooperate to the state of the nation, and not just push them away, because, and the militarism as a problem to development of democracy in Africa is still a problem. Look at what is, all of us are pretending not to remember what is going on in Nigeria right now with so many things happening. Lagos has been reduced to ashes because of the structures that have been destroyed. So what some of the things that one is suggesting to do is, it is our responsibility as scholars to continue to ginger the spirit of the people. Look, one of the latest book, the latest book on globalization, which I referred to, I don't know whether you can see the, it's the latest, I've already written the title to you, Africa and Globalization, Novel Multidisciplinary Perspectives, edited by Kilebogile Sitiluane and Abdul Bangura. It just came out of the press yesterday, you understand? We need to produce things like this, discuss it among ourselves, because they have taken different aspects of globalization and the difficulties that Africa is going to, and reiterated it. Much of what you are saying, especially the three items that Dr. Okome identified as state situation, the composition of the state, of the nation as youthful, and scholars' perspective. The last one is what I congratulate KDF for doing. They give us the opportunity to go back home, whether people like to receive information from us or not, because we are from them, rather than they would like to receive information from people who are not from them. That's their problem. But we must continue to do this. That is the future. Thank you very much.
Yeah, there is a very good comment here about language, the need for a paradigm shift, and the use of our languages, and to do so unapologetically. I want to ask Dr. Obonyo, as somebody who PhD you noted is in artificial intelligence, and of course you've been working in a number of areas. specifically with your collaborators on resilience in terms of housing and so on. The question I have for you is, what do you think is the impact of the fourth industrial revolution and COVID-19 on Africa, and how can these two be leveraged in promoting a new type of development for the continent? One is more innovative, more integrated, and more sustainable.
All right.
Dr. Obonyo.
Thank you. That's a very good question. So I'm happy to share some thoughts. So I think COVID is definitely a crisis that we are not happy about, but with it, we also know comes opportunities. And some of the things that we are noticing is the fact that because of limited mobility, the balance of power has shifted in favor of African countries, and we need to make use of it. A lot of things that traditionally have relied on expatriates and Western researchers moving physically and going to Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Nigeria, any African country, that model, it's been disrupted. Human mobility, like model of interventions that are relying on human mobility going forward, even beyond the crisis, are going to be different, meaning that there's an opportunity for Africans to take charge of their own destiny. What we are doing in our project is taking advantage of the fact that nobody is moving right now to shift as many responsibilities as possible to our partners. And what I think Africans need to do is to create opportunities for them and their students and younger professionals to develop the experience. Because a lot of times when people are being selected for leadership roles, our African students don't make the cut because they've not been exposed. My students at Penn State, by the time they show up in Nairobi, they will compete with a Nairobi-born student and get the job, not because they're smarter, not because they know the context, but because they've been immersed in these environments where they're seeing the emerging technologies, they're working closely with their professors and their mentors. And I think we need to take advantage of this opportunity, not wait until when the crisis is over, because people will start moving again. Start acting now. There is value in data. The fourth industrial revolution is putting us in a place where Africans can actually take control of the future of the continent. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Now I have, maybe a couple of last questions which I'd like each one of you to address, and if you can take a short period in doing so. You have all talked about collaborations, the importance of collaborations, and certainly your own engagement in the Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship Program in working with institutions on the continent is rooted in that spirit of collaboration. My question is, what are the key challenges and opportunities based on your own experiences in promoting truly transformative partnerships with colleagues on the continent? Because you can have different types of partnership. One that can be very paternalistic between the host and the rider, and one can be very opportunistic, in which an opportunity comes and you do it, but after that it doesn't really matter. And one can be based on principles of solidarity. So what from your vantage points some of the challenges and opportunities in the collaboration between yourselves as members of the new African diaspora and the continent? So if we can just go around the table, let's start with Dr. Zalanga, very briefly, a minute or two, and then we'll go to get everybody comment on that based on your experiences. So let's start with you, Dr. Zalanga.
The partnership. Are you asking about partnership?
Yes, the challenges and opportunities in partnership between yourselves in the diaspora and our colleagues on the continent.
Okay,
because this is not a smooth sailing.
There are two things, the two comments that I would like to make based on my experience, comments that some people have made reference to. I think there's a way in which sometimes those of us who live in the diaspora come up with this feeling like because we live in the United States or the United Kingdom, whatever, we are super, we know everything, we're better. And even when we go sometimes to Africa, the way we relate to people can indicate that we have that sense of implicit sense of superiority or whatever. So humility is really, really very important. I found out that it was very easy for me to relate to people in humility. I never tell anybody in Africa that I disagree with him or her, but I use the Socratic method to ask them questions. And in the process of just asking the questions, they come to realize that maybe there's something wrong in what they have said or whatever. And then we kind of take a new, there's a paradigm shift in our conversation. So that's one way to think about that, humility. The other thing is people in Africa also need to understand this. I have received some direct attacks sometimes from people after making presentation for no other reason, but they feel like just because I'm from the United States, they want to just attack me or whatever. Sometimes from their questions, they don't even seem to understand what somebody is really saying. So I don't think our colleagues in Africa should automatically think that simply because we are from the United States or from outside, their attitude should be belligerent, trying to attack us because we are from outside. Because I have seen that the member of a council of one university really, after a presentation, just directly attacked me on something that was groundless. Of course, I was able to respond to him. So it's on both sides. On our part, we need humility. It's very, very important. And then on their part, they have to understand that in order for us to work together, they don't have to automatically just perceive us as if we're competing with them or whatever, and then just start attacking us. So that's what I want to say about that.
Dr. Florence Wakoko, start still. What would you say in a minute?
I really agree with him. And so the point here is that we need to retrain ourselves to be acculturated, relearn to be Africans again. And I've seen that it happens to all of us. But also, as we relearn to be Africans, there is a need also to try to get our folks, our relatives, our colleagues back home, even the state, the leadership itself, to appreciate what we are doing. So this gives me an opportunity to think that this organization here where we are right now, I think we need to come up with a way forward that is going to establish how we can make an entry point into the powers that be, because we can't operate in a vacuum. We need those kinds of collaborations. And so another point here is also to do with, besides them misinterpreting who we are, there is a tendency also for Africa, especially in some parts of Africa where people are so downtrodden, they would tend to not to provide proper accountability, especially when you are talking about money. And that question of failure to provide appropriate accountability of resources that you have used is a huge problem, because eventually you end up having a program which is not going to be sustainable. But all in all, it takes two to tango, as we say. We both need to learn how to work together. But it will have to take us to be very determined to say intentionally, we are going to establish a process, how we can go in as Africans in the diaspora and work with all different stakeholders.
Dr. Julia Ugoji, if you were to craft of Africans on the continent and in the diaspora, what would those new ways be?
I don't know, is it your internet or mine? I didn't hear you clearly, sir.
Yes, I was asking you a slight twist on the question. So we have heard about some of the challenges and the need for two to tango, humility, and so on. How would you, sort of design modalities of engagement between Africans in the diaspora and on the continent that are mutually beneficial and productive and transformative?
Yeah. Like again, if you want to do something for me, and if you don't know me too well, or you don't know somebody that knows me, it's a little bit hard. So if you want to design something for me, you first of all find out what I need. Is it going to help me? And we also know that if you want to go fast, you go alone. And you want to go far, you go with people. So if we can agree to work together, which I know we have, and collectively we present our templates, our model we want to use in Tanzania, in Ivory Coast, in Nigeria, removing all our biases, definitely is going to work. But it will not work if we don't involve them. We must involve them and we must be patient. That kind of template is, I think, is what can move us, way forward.
The last question for the other three presenters has to do with what many of you have said, the need for interdisciplinary collaboration. Whether we're talking of research or projects or whatever, interdisciplinary is important. How do we promote interdisciplinary partnerships and research among, or how have you done it, from different fields? Some of you are scientists, natural scientists, some of you are social scientists, some of you, of course, humanists, and so on and so forth. So let me start with Professor Okome. How do you promote modalities of interdisciplinarity that produce knowledge that, again, is not only deep and profound intellectually, but also practical and transformative for society?
If I successfully answer this question, I need the Nobel Prize. So for me, I think it's actually easy. I think easy because I do women's studies. Women's studies is interdisciplinary. It's also easy because I am curious about other fields outside of my own area of competence. And I'm always willing to learn. So I think if most of us develop that kind of attitude, that we don't know everything, in order to do what we do well, we have to learn from others. And then that means we have to spend time to really get to know what the fundamentals of those other disciplines are, in order to incorporate and to not just incorporate, but to synergize. Because the whole thing about if you want to go far, then work with others, means that you have to devote energy. You have to build trust. You have to be humble about what you don't know. You have to confess that you don't know certain things and be willing to learn from others. And then, even when people meet you with animosity, you actually have to, if you're really interested in building a community, you have to let go of your ego and show people that you stand with them. So my own experience is that after a long number of years, people who have abused you as being a carpetbagger, as you took all the money abroad and you are enjoying in paradise when they are suffering, they are the ones who will approach you and say, let's work together. Because they see from what you have done that you are willing to help. Now, this is scholars here in diaspora and scholars at home. Now, interdisciplinary work I have always done. So my work I see as bridging the humanities and social sciences. And I guess because I also, I grew up with friends who are doctors and in the sciences, I've also taken an interest in those areas. So, I think but we can't expect everybody to be interested in everything. I think one has to really be conscious of the fact that we each have our own areas that interest us and we feel passionate about. So whatever those interests are, let us build communities that are able to give us a very holistic perspective so we can really solve problems, Now, one of the things that prevents much of this from happening is that, we don't take research seriously in the continent yet. There's inadequate funding and inadequate resources. And so, some of us who have the resources, we have to be willing to share. And some of us don't have the resources and people don't believe us because people always think I bring a bag of money and I'm hiding it, So I think building trust is one thing, and then also working together to figure out what are the conceptual issues, drawing them very clearly. And then what kinds of research programs we can plan together around the issue areas that we are very highly motivated to pursue. And then realizing this is for the long term, you know. But in the meantime, we need the state. We need functional states in the continent, not functional, efficient, developmental states, not the ones that are killing us, though, you know, but states that are interested in also working together, you know, with the scholars
let
to
me
do
get
all this. Thank you, sorry.
Yes, yeah. No, thank you very much. Let me ask Dr. Bonyo to address some question, and then finally, Dr. Bully to address that same question of interdisciplinarity and your own experiences and the challenges and the opportunities. And then we'll have finally some people who have had their hands raised to make brief comments, and then we close the session. So Dr. Bonyo and Dr. Bully.
So
let's
thank you.
start with Dr. Bonyo.
Thank you. From my title, you know that I am already interdisciplinary. My background for research is architectural engineering. My home for doing everything related to the entire system and ecosystem is engineering design. And I'm also now currently placed in the Institutes of Energy and Environment for the role I'm playing in the Global Building Network. So in short, I'm saying like one of the things that we'll need to change in the African context is providing more faculty members an opportunity to straddle department, because when that happens, then it's easy for especially strategic partnership development for those relationships to happen. Because my salary is split by 3 units, I am loyal to all the 3 units, and everything I come into, I bring that up as a conversation. I'll use one quick example. Within the Global Building Network, when I joined, a statement had already been made. Energy efficiency is the most important thing. And you can tell that's from an architectural engineering perspective. When I came in, I told them, if you hire me, this is going to change to energy use is important, not the most important thing. And what that did, it opened up the door to talk about both energy efficiency for those who have plenty, but we can now also talk about energy burden. And that becomes fertile ground for people to attack the problem from different perspectives, because you've changed it from efficiency, which is very technical, very engineering, yeah, to burden. And now all of a sudden it's a social economic problem that opens the door to for everybody to participate. So yes, my point will just be that the final point I'll make in relation to that, even our students, I was thinking about the number of law classes that I took in Kenya, at the University of Nairobi. If I had done the same thing in the US, I would have a minor in law. I would have a degree that says I have a minor in law. Let's do this for our students. They have the knowledge, but it is hidden inside their transcripts. Bring it up, put it on the transcripts and on their degree certificates. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Bule?
This is Henry Bole. I want to indicate that this collaboration, that actually I would try to focus on we as Carnegie alumni. And it just so happened, I'm going to talk about the lady who just talked about me. That's Esther. We met in New York City in 2018. Somebody's.
Can you mute if you're not speaking, please?
Somebody's, if we can.
Okay. Don't say your conversation. Okay, go on, Dr. Bull.
So I want to mention that I met Esther, who just talked before me in 20.
I think the host has the ability to mute them. Who's the host? You can mute them.
I'm muting them. I'm muting them.
Professor Mevi.
There are many.
Professor
What's his name?
Professor Mevi.
It cures a lot of things. It keeps your heart beating to them. It's true. Level like you want.
Okay.
I'm fine. I tell you. You got to be fine. You have no choice than to be fine.
Please unmute everybody.
Okay, I got him. I mute him. Okay. All right. Sorry. So I wanted to talk about my collaboration and how it started with Esther. We met in 2018 in the Carnegie office. Whilst I was talking and she was talking, we just look at each other and say, we're going to work together. And for the most part, we're having bi-weekly meetings with a gentleman whose background is medical geography. And the idea was that I'm in the geospatial sciences, Esther is in the building sciences. We have no idea how we connect, but then can we talk and figure out the mutual interest? I was once talking to her, I think I was driving or we were talking about something, and I'm talking about this paper I'm working on, landscape change, land drivers. And at one point we said, wait a minute, who is driving the landscape change? Is the people who are building. And once you go in and build infrastructure, you change the landscape. So guess what? The two of us are on the paper that is about landscape change and sustainable development. And we were trying to do something with regards to the, Esther, help me here, the Maasai, right? The Maasai region. I have no clue, but then we brought in this data and I'm expecting Esther to understand. Now, it's going to take a little bit of the two of us trying to understand exactly what each person needs to provide it and learn with each other. Now, I'm raising this because if we're going to even understand and work with each other, yes, it's going to take humility, but then intentional decision to say, I'm going to get into this. It might not follow the usual tenure, get paper, but try to make sure that we recreate the context. It's going to clash in certain areas. Our areas are not merging, our people, our contacts are not merging, but find a way to redesign this collaboration in a way that if I'm from Ghana and I'm working in Uganda and I'm working with Esther who is working in Kenya and other countries, how do we blend our interests? This is beyond our expertise, but blend it in such a way that at the end of the day, it benefits the people in Africa. I think this is important. And once we approach it with humility and openness, we also keep an eye for opportunities for each other.
Yeah.
Dr. Bully.
Thank you. So let me ask the people with their hands up. The people with their hands up. No, let's because we're coming towards the end, and some people have had their hands up for some time. I'll ask you to speak for no more than a minute to make your point. Let's start with Joe Atungu, who originally was supposed to speak but didn't have a chance. Joe?
Thank you very much, Paul. I want to appreciate this team for this very, very well packaged webinar. Yeah, like you say, 1 minute. I'm looking at the possibility of engaging more researchers and research situation in Africa by those of you that are in the diaspora. Dr. Zalanga says something very critical about Nigeria. And I want to say that the state structure is such that, you know, the power is at the center, indicating that even those at the grassroots who are now governed by the local government council do not have the autonomy to do their work. And I think that that aspect has to be looked into in the matter that those who are in charge of the local community should be able to enforce and empower them to do what is right. But more so is that when you look at partnership, when an African person is trying to access grants overseas, there is some kind of limitation. You know, somebody from Nigeria is just seen as somebody who is not going to do the right thing, and therefore it's not given the opportunity. And I think this bias should not be there. Like you mentioned, you're all Africans in diaspora, and we are proud of you of what you are doing there. So such confidence should to be extended to those good ones in Nigeria and Africa to be able to do what is also right. I think I'm very critical about this issue. And finally, sir, if you allow me, there's also this issue of exchange rate. You know, you have very big money, as it were, in US or UK, as it is, maybe some dollars, some pounds sterling, but when it comes down because of the exchange rate, it's just very little and could just do very small thing. And therefore, it cannot be obvious in terms of the impact. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. The next person is Jean-Jacques Ngorsene. If you can just share your views for
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief, actually. I jotted down some notes to go faster. I too am very, very grateful to have been here. I always like to joke that some important meetings really start after they are finished. This seems to be.
Yes.
I wanted to make a comment on humility. I think the humility goes also with a piece that I call reciprocity, the awareness that our colleagues on the ground there have some values that and assets that by nature we no longer do. And the humility should be almost natural because they have, by the very nature of our presence here, we lose some preciousness of our Africanness. It gets diluted, and they reconnect us to a certain authenticity that is precious. Finally, on interdisciplinarity, there is something that I was never able to ascertain, but apparently in Japan, they randomly almost fling together a group of 30 people who are by definition as different in fields of expertise as possible. And they assign them design policies in given areas, and it usually works. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for those very profound remarks made very with exemplary brevity. Vincent Ogunoro. Ogunoro. Vincent?
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't know whether you guys can hear me, but yes.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. I'm using a cell phone, that's why. So, you know, I'm really passionate about this presentation, and I thank everybody who made that this presentation. One thing that I'm really worried about is how we can actually, encourage our elites to really be the ones driving all of this, because, in most countries that have developed, it is not everybody that will buy into those development. It is just a nuclear group of people that are going to do it. And as a result, that is lacking in Africa. And secondly, another thing that I want to, quickly, talk about is when I'm a civil engineer by profession, and I work here, in the US, and I've got this, Carnegie Endowed, fellowship to Nigeria. And it was a very, incredible experience for me, because the students back home, they want to work hard, but the resources are not there for them. But one of the things that I see in my interaction with the professors is that some of them are really highly motivated, some are not.
Yeah.
Now,
like everywhere.
Because of that, the ones that are motivated, we need to identify who they are. And then we need to really, really encourage them, because those are the ones that are really going to train many of these students that will become the leaders tomorrow. And we have to also help them to be more, deliberate, intentional, because some of the presentation here today was to the point about appropriate technology for appropriate environment. We have to believe that issues need to be addressed, not just.
Oh, we're not hearing you.
Listen,
the approach we should try to use in Africa. And as a result, I just want to quickly, I still have a lot to say, but I know we don't have much time. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. In the interest of time, I'll ask two more people to speak. Again, please be very brief. Paul M. Ajuwon.
Yes, thank you so much, sir, and appreciate this forum very much. Let me just briefly say that I'm a blind professor in Missouri State University. I hail from Nigeria. I attended the special school for blind children in Lagos and went to two famous secondary schools in Lagos. And luckily, I got a Nigerian government scholarship to study at Vanderbilt. And then I got a Rotary Foundation international scholarship to study at Calgary. I was really interested in what everybody had to say. But what gives me a headache is that no one has mentioned the plight of people with disabilities on the continent. We need to talk about youths with disabilities, and there are tons of them in all the countries in Africa. We talk about being part of the modern world, like Samuel said, how do we engage people with disabilities so that they can actualize their hopes and aspirations and become integral part of the community in each country? We need to train women and girls and empower them to become independent and self-fulfilling and become tax-paying members of their community. How do we do that if we don't talk about them in the 2030, in the 2063, and so on and so forth? So it gives me a headache that that has not been considered worthy topic in this discussion. I have a problem with our leaders who joined the bandwagon to attend conferences in Geneva, UNESCO, New York, on behalf of people with disabilities. My problem with them is that somebody talks about a lawyer being head of a Ministry of Health. Well, it's similar to what I want to say. You know, our bureaucrats and elites, they love to attend these international meetings to sign treaties that pertain to people with disabilities in different countries. You know, what I tell them occasionally when I get to Geneva and these places, they have no business coming there because they are just junketers. They just love to go there to shop all the important issues that are discussed in New York, Geneva, and so on and so forth. They go back home and do absolutely nothing. That gives me a headache. So in conclusion, I would like to see the issues of disability getting more prominent attention in discussions like this, because we need to move forward, folks. COVID-19 has destroyed special services for the handicapped all over Africa. We get emails, phone calls every day. I have friends in Kenya, Tanzania, in Ghana. We have about 20 or 30 African scholars with disabilities who are in Canada and the US, and we are really concerned about the lackadaisical approach of Nigerian government, of Ghanaian government, African governments generally toward issues that affect people with disabilities. And those of us in the diaspora, you know, we learn good things about how to care in our courses for people with disabilities, for students who are in our program. But when we go to African universities, what do? We neglect them. We tell them you can't do this course, yet the examination body says, go to that university, they're giving you a letter. And the head of that department says, you can be in my department for no absolute just cause. That is discrimination, and we got to stop that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that is a very, very important point. I fully we need to be very holistic, diversity and inclusion in our communities, in our investors, in our organizations. We tend to focus on because the important issues.
We can't hear you. I don't know if it's me.
Race, nationality, but we don't give enough attention. Oh, hello, can you hear me?
We can't. We're just. Your
band Wi-Fi is weak.
Your band is.
Oh, my one.
Your band is
weak.
Technology is not working.
All right. Technology.
But
me. I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes.
Kind of. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you now. Are you not giving us a chance to speak?
Yeah, I was saying that. So I was saying that last speaker made a very important point that we need to have a holistic view of diversity. That includes people living with disability. I would maybe conclude with that point. At our university, we take that issue very seriously. And recently, we just got a grant, a sizable grant from the MasterCard Foundation of about $63.2 million to recruit 1,000 students from across to come and study at our university over the next several years. And one of the conditions, one of the populations that we're going to be targeting in that scholarship program are youth with disability. So we'll be targeting young women. 70% have to be young women, and then 25% internally displaced and refugees, because that's a population also that is marginalized in our institutions, and 10% youth with disability. This is extremely important for us to think about, because every human being has, of course, a right to be included in the world of education, in the world of work, in the world of politics, in every sector and in every walk of life of our societies. So I really want to thank the last speaker for bringing this issue to the table, to make sure that we talk about these issues. Let's be inclusive.
What happened?
Provocative ideas, Dr. Bule, Dr. Boyo, Dr. Mokoko.
Okay, your thing is breaking up.
It's okay. It's
Is it me?
technology. No, it's technology. It's the internet connection.
Yeah.
Technology is now failing me. Yeah, sorry, technology is now failing me. But I just want to wish all of you, I want to wish you the best. I think Professor Philomena Okeke mentioned the need that we need to have an agenda. I agree with her. This meeting is an appetizer, and I'm hoping that we'll have other opportunities to talk. And Professor Okome also made a point that we need more of these conversations with different communities that are involved in this project of engaging Africa and the diaspora. And I want to thank Evelyn for organizing and helping organize this forum. And I want to wish all of you good health, and of course, keep safe in these very dangerous times when we have to deal with this little thing that none of us can see, but has created the big crisis in health and economies over the last 100 years. So keep safe and keep well, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Professor Zeleza, you have to organize a group that engages the AU.
Thank you. Let's do that. In fact, we're already engaging the AU. Evelyn can share some of those details.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Professor, include us, include the Carnegie people.
Yes.
Yes.
Professor
That is a good idea.
Professor, also remember to include those of us in Canada. Include those of us in Canada. Not
yes. Please go ahead, Zandile. You wanted to say something.
Yes, please connect me. Yes, please connect me with the gentleman who spoke about disabilities, because that's my specialty. I would like to collaborate and work on something with him. I'm so glad that he pointed out that very important. I'm in special education that's my expertise.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
And
thank you.
Yes,
and good night, everyone.